Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Kyle and me today. I am Christy Perez. I am the Partner Success Manager here at Cognition360. Um, I've been in the MSP space for quite some time. Kind of dates myself when I say I've been doing this for about 20 years now. Been with Cognition360 for about 2 years. It's hard to believe it's already been that long. And today, Kyle and I are going to be going over the top 5 reasons why your agreement profitability reports are wrong. Kyle, at this time, I'll let you go ahead, introduce yourself, and then we can kind of just jump right into to the webinar.
Definitely. Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on. My name's Kyle Christensen. I'm the COO and one of the co-founders over here at Sierra Pacific Group. I've been in the MSP space since about 2007, 2006. So I've been around since, I could barely drive or vote. So I've been around the space at multiple MSPs, also been a private executive coach, EOS implementer, and financial guru as the topic we're going to cover today is pretty close to the Sierra Pacific Group brand, as it definitely creates some of the most angst in some of our MSPs that we work with in our ConnectWise boss family, because it definitely resonates with making those informed decisions and where should I drive my business and where do we go next and how do we make these decisions, and is that report I'm looking at that my service manager dropped on my desk, is it actually important?
Great. I'm going to share my screen here so we can see. Let's see here. And Kyle, I noticed that our pictures, we did not coordinate these pictures, but we look like we're matching perfectly. So it worked out well. Um,
Definitely.
the what we're going to be reviewing today, kind of as Kyle was saying earlier, how accurate are your reports that you're pulling for agreement profitability, and some of the ways to make sure that those are accurate. How do you look for the data? Where do you go to look for the data? And can you tell if it's correct or incorrect data? So we're going to be kind of walking through. We've kind of laid this out in a top 5 in no particular order. They're all pretty important topics to discuss. I think Kyle on the Sierra Pacific side, me on the Cognition360 side, we see these a lot. So when Kyle and I met to discuss this, we were like, let's just do this as a, what are the top 5 things that we see a lot that are kind of overlooked, or especially if you've been using ConnectWise for a long time. I started using ConnectWise in like 2003 or 4, I think. And when the setup for if you've been on ConnectWise for a long time, a lot of times when they said set up your agreements this way, it's a little different now. Best practices have changed. So you've got some kind of grandfathered in agreements or older agreements out there that might have, what we call faux labor. And so we're going to be talking through a lot of those different topics today. Kyle, I'll let you go ahead and get started with this first one on reason number 5. Oh, before you start, we do have the chat open. Put your questions in there. If you have any questions, we do want to try to keep this as conversational as possible. So add anything you have to the chat and we will answer those kind of as we're going through everything.
Definitely. And I think real quick before we get into the list, I know we have it up on the screen here, but one thing that I really wanted to point out that I think is really important for business owners and operators to really hear and understand is that keeping your data clean is one of those systemic things that we constantly see in this industry where we like to blame the tool. We like to blame the everything but our processes, our operations, the accountability in our organizations. And a lot of times, we hear things like, oh, I don't have time to make that correct. I don't have time to teach someone how to do this. I don't have the ability to learn these things. And I always find it kind of entertaining and a sign for opportunity, growth, and maturity, because as owners, right, I would never tell one of my MSP clients that, right, like, hey, it's Right, I would never see a doctor blaming the PMS system because he couldn't treat the patient. I would never see an
They might try
accountant,
to.
right? Yeah, they might try to. I would never see an accountant blame, Lasat or QuickBooks for why they can't get the taxes done on time, right? There's a level of education that is so important to using these business management tools that you need to go step by step by step to really maintain this data. And these reports and these tools are only as valuable as the time and effort you put into them. And when you start to lean on these excuses of engineers and, oh, they don't like putting data in, or I don't like the time for agreements, well, then how do you make trained business decisions without this type of data? Now, getting into this, I think this segues into really figuring out things like what data is going into ConnectWise in order to really high level understand the profitability of my customers. Now, profitability, real simple, high level, right? It's your level of income. What type of revenue are you billing? Subtract the COGS, subtract a little bit of the tool sets and the time and labor, and that tells you what your profitability is going to be. Now, there are ways to running your business and understanding these profitabilities that is multifaceted, meaning there's a couple right ways to do this. You just need to pick one and standardize it. Now, one thing we commonly see is, right, my managed service clients or my managed security clients, how am I tracking all of that operational and expense time? Meaning, right, my account managers, my operations, my dispatcher. And wherever you put them on the P&L, whether it's COGS or expenses, that is still time that is being spent to deliver a service. Now, I know there's CFOs out there that can argue either way, but there are two different ways to categorize these, and we see two different levels of importance. Now, personally, right, when I ran my MSPs, my account managers were seen as a cost of doing business for my managed services because I was trying to have them encapsulate the client experience, right? A lot of that touchy-feely stuff. Sometimes you see that as VCIO, sometimes you'll see that as technical account management, but then other people have it defined as like sales renewals. So we have two different facets here where, right, if it's a COG, cost of doing service, right, what are some of the benefits and the reasons why you need to track this time accurately? Right? Are your account managers billed as a cost of doing business on the P&L? Is their salary going to a COG? And are you billing time to an agreement? Right? If they're putting time in to have their QBRs, to have someone write that QBR report, to talk with a vendor from a relationship perspective, that is trying to help the client's service technology and the services that they are receiving to deliver things like your SLAs, your uptime promises, all that good stuff that you guys do. So, right, if you're in that case, right, that means they need to be putting time in. And we're going to be getting some other functions of putting time into tickets, right? Those times need to be billed to those agreements. Because I need to understand if I personally, as a business owner, had to pay somebody, X amount of hours to work with a client, I need to track that time was spent. And now on the other side of the fence, right, there is that, well, right, they kind of manage some pro services. They kind of manage some vendor relationships. They're kind of doing also some leads and some upsell functions. So I kind of want them as an expense, right? Well, then, okay, is the account management team budgeted as a company expense? Meaning, are you tracking the percentage of salary that you are going to forecast for your yearly goals for the amount of money you're going to be spending on account managers? Are you managing their salaries as a budgeted item rather than client profitability? Right? I can't spend X dollars this year or X percent of that. And last but not least, if they are working tickets, their time would be billed to your company and not be billed to the agreement. Right? And I think that's the key differentiator here, and where I personally get always a little overly passionate about the idea of best practice, because here are two different ways of doing it correctly, and either one of them is a good practice. You just got to find the one that you want to do for your business. Right?
And be consistent. It's the whole
Exactly.
consistent piece of it.
The thing of the moving target in our industry is so widespread of, oh, well, we do it this way, and then another consultant told us to do it that way. So we have this department.
These account managers are putting in their time. These aren't. These are putting them in. Actually, we have a question, Kyle, that just came in.
Yeah.
Basically, the question is, do you recommend tracking QBRs by activities or by tickets?
Great question. And this falls
It is.
exactly in this category. If they are an expense to your business, then they're going to be tracked in an activity or a ticket to your organization, billed to your organization. Now, if they are a cog, then then it's going to be a ticket billed to that agreement. Now, personally, I prefer the cog route because I really want to know all in from a gross margin, gross profitability perspective, what my actual services are netting the organization for growth type expenditures, right? Sales, G&A, operational, finance, all those types of verticals.
Mhm.
So personally, when I ran my MSPs and the MSPs that we work with a lot of times here at Sierra Pacific Group, right, they are having ticket templates when the client
Mhm.
is part in
Yep.
their onboarding process that generate X number of months, right? Like if it's quarterly, every 3 months, a ticket gets generated a month before the QBR needs to be delivered.
Mhm.
My MSP, we actually had two. We had a QBR ticket for the engineer to develop all the paperwork
Yep.
and do those forms and those checklists and all those beautiful things that we have resources for. And then a ticket for the account manager, because then they would put time into that ticket for the delivery, the notes that they're going to send to the client to actually send the QBR report to the client out of the ticket so we have tracking. And then also so that we could have things like the right work rules and work types, which we're going to talk about why that's important as well, to make sure that the accurate costs of that account manager were built to that agreement.
Yeah. Kyle, one thing to add, if you guys are using activities right now and want that cost to go towards your agreement profitability as a cost for that account manager, Cognition360, we actually do have a way to bring in those activities as a cost as well. So if there's a particular activity, QBR for instance, or meeting, and you want those to be considered a cost on your agreement, we can actually put in business rules to bring those in. To bring that meeting time in as well. So if you currently aren't doing it as tickets, which I do also recommend doing them as tickets, setting up those templates for your engineers, your sales, even setting up those pre-meetings. A lot of time goes into the prep of that QBR time. And if you're not tracking it, you're not going to get true profitability on those agreements.
Exactly.
Let's see, number 4. Actual versus rounded time. This is one of those that we definitely see a lot. When you're first setting up ConnectWise, it's, hey, let's set up our time to be rounded for the engineers. There's a misunderstanding there with, is it for invoicing or is it for time tracking? Actual time is what your engineers need to be putting into the tickets, not rounded time. If they're putting in rounded time, it's gonna make your profitability on those agreements look smaller. Let's say they worked, 10 tickets that month, and they were, let's say they were communication tickets, and they rounded up to 15 minutes, or they were, tickets that took them 2 or 3 minutes, and they're rounding up. To get the true cost, because we're going to use the true actual cost to figure out the cost of the labor going on your agreements, the engineers need to put in that actual time versus the rounded time. Rounded time set up on the invoicing side, rounded, your remote to 15 minutes or your on-site to an hour is what I usually see. But if they're putting in rounded time, it can also affect utilization. So, not only is it affecting your agreement profitability, it's also overstating your utilization. So it's going to be really hard to try and see, is that engineer overutilized, or is it just because we've got rounded time in there? If they're supposed to put in 8 hours a day and they're able to round their time, they might be working more like 5 or 6 billable hours a day instead of the 7 or 8 that it looks like they're doing. 6.5, best in class, that's what we want. It's making it look like your team is running hot when really they're not. So just a couple of things to point out is, look at your processes, see if you're doing actual versus that rounded time. Another reason for timely time entries going in, that real-time time entry. The way to get that actual timing correctly is to put a process in to make sure that you're getting in that real-time time entry. If you start letting your engineers wait till the end of the day or even the next day or the end of the week to put all their time in, most of the time they're going to be guessing and that time's going to go in rounded. So again, it's going to make your profitability on those agreements look lower than what it actually is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think you can find a single person in this industry that's a high performer, best in class,
Yeah,
super mature, that isn't really working a service management model where you are managing service, meaning I'm not the smartest engineer in the room, but I'm a damn good people manager. And it's one of those things that I'm so passionate about because the whole level when it comes to managing your costs, which is right, a service management function, you need to have very clear expectations and SOPs for your teams to follow, and you don't want to convolute it, right? It's a lot easier to tell somebody, right? Enter time as you do it, right? If I work from 11:05 to 11:10, that's an easy one to train out. Having to train a staff of rounding and trying to figure out this fake rounding,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
just lending yourself to a higher margin of error. And when it comes to the profitability of my business, to make sure my costs are really managed, that way I can be competitive in my market, is such a important function. And to be quite frank,
yeah,
it's something where, as an industry, we're actually a lot more mature than other companies. The
yeah,
fact that we can separate utilization from billability or realized utilization is a huge differentiator in our space because we are able to see really finite ways to where we can grow our capacities to deliver service. We can manage them way more granular. And if you
mhm,
go to any other industry like accountants and law firms and a lot of business management type companies, they really go off utilization, and it's a guess of how much time was client facing, how much time was
yeah,
service facing, right? It's because they don't have these time management functions. And that's why at the end of the day, it needs to be a no exceptions, right? Your service teams put time in
yeah,
to tickets, and they usually have to have some form of a time wrap so that they can show their 8 hours a day, so that your service managers can manage people fairly, right? And that's a key word in our industry right now, especially with people wanting to jump and go to other companies, right? Like that they know that that other person sitting next to them, right?
yeah.
They're being held to the same standard. So
Well, it's
it just
also so much
yeah,
remote work now.
yeah.
Even the work from home that everybody is kind of switching to. If they're putting in rounded time, you don't really know what they're doing. I've added in a Cognition360 report here. This is team utilization report, but you can see here with this top person, they've got 184 hours available. Utilized time is coming in at 274 hours. More than
And that
likely,
person needs a day off.
they either need a day off or they're putting in a lot of rounded time.
Yes.
If they're putting in a lot of rounded time, what it's also going to do is make their billable realized per day higher. So it's going to look like, oh my gosh, we need to hire, this person's getting killed, um, or it's rounded time. If you have it going in actual, it's going to help with your hiring. It's going to give you that information that you need to know, hey, is it time for us to hire? Because it is an engineer's market right now. So you need that time tracking to be able to see, is my team running hot? Do we need to hire? Uh, are they getting overworked? Are they going to have burnout? And if you have that time going in consistently, not actual, it's going to be really hard for you to tell, what's going on. How much time is being spent in meetings? How much time is being spent in admin? That admin time wrap, during the day.
So, and I want to comment real quick. Pete Schultz just pointed out EOS businesses and adding this function to the scorecard of an EOS, and that's exactly what I did when I implemented EOS at many MSPs. Is billability or utilization has to be on every self-reported scorecard because as a business owner, right, I am setting my budgets every November, December with these functions in mind, right? How much utilization and billability am I budgeting my service teams? Because that allows me to then control my COGS and also allow my service managers to understand without having to ask when they can hire, right? They know that my gross margin needs to be X%. And if my COGS are here and they start to dip because income is growing, revenue is growing, I can hire. That whole conversation now goes away, right? That accountability is so key. And honestly, if you tell employees, engineers on day one, you need to be 80% billable, they're going to be 80% billable. There's no pushback. The pushback only comes when they've had months at 30% billable, and now you try to hold them accountable to 80%, right? That's when it becomes a shock to them. So
Yeah.
thank you, Pete, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. This slide I've thrown in, this is part of our agreement profitability reporting, being able to look at your profitability by month. Um, this particular client here, when I look at this, I come over here and I see the labor hours right at 46 hours. Lets me know that more than likely that was probably rounded time. If it is rounded time, this labor cost is going to be higher because it's bringing in that actual time. And your overall profit margin is coming in at 40% when it might be closer to that 50 or 55 or whatever that percentage margin is that you're looking for. So it's just kind of a way to show, here's your actual labor cost, the time's going in rounded, it's making your costs look higher, your profitability look lower. So it's just kind of a way to see how that looks, in a report if you have that rounded time versus actual time going in. Kyle, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, and this one, I think we could talk an entire session on.
Yeah.
Because really what comes into this is accurate additions inside your agreements and manage. And, we see so many different ways of using agreements inside of manage. And the one thing that is consistent is that they are inconsistent, right? As you're selling agreements from, throughout the lifespan of your MSP, and whether you're an operator or an owner, is right. You sell one in month 3 of your existence and then one in month 33. And a lot of times there's a consistency that is just not there because you never went back to modify the old ones to look like the new ones. Now, I'm not talking about the quote template or what you include in them, but how you set the agreements up. And some good examples of this that we see, I call it the trash can method, which is every single thing I bill a client for goes into that agreement edition. And there's going to be SaaS in there. There's going to be backup in there. There's going to be security endpoints in there. There's going to be managed service in there. There's going to be my dinner from last week in there. There's going, right? You start to see that they just throw additions in there because it easily pops up on the invoice. And, a lot of this is great because at least you're getting the invoice out and you're getting the revenue in. But it starts to negatively impact the profitability and the perception that you then have of where your business is healthy. And this trickles out to where if I see agreements like that, I typically can also predict that your QuickBooks chart of accounts is probably just as bad of a mess, where you usually probably have one GL code where all the revenue is getting booked to, or a bunch of stuff that's just never been booked, period. And I can tell you right now, the bookkeeping team we have at Sierra Pacific Group, where we do bookkeeping service for MSPs, every single time we usually need to do a chart of accounts project right off the get-go for us to do bookkeeping because we can't predict for you where your revenue is healthy. Now, a lot of times what we'll look at is when was the last time you updated or reconciled some of these additions, right? Sometimes you'll see the day that they started the agreement, right? You're selling price per endpoint, price per user. Well, that's off to me because our clients' businesses, our businesses, are the endpoints we give them, they change, right? You need a reconciliation process to influx that so that you can say that your client revenue went up. And not only that is, do all of your agreement types use the same additions? And really what I want to talk about that is, if we're looking at, let's use managed service profitability for an example, why would I put 365 licenses inside of that agreement? And, I'll get some people, we get a plethora of reasons, but the one thing I don't have a great way to draw it out right now or whiteboard this, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to figure out is, right, top line revenue minus COGS. Well, if I'm charging managed services revenue and I'm providing managed services, why would I want to add the revenue of 365 to kind of falsify the amount of profitability I'm getting? Right? It kind of grows that top line, but maybe, right, I want to look at just the profitability of managed services, not of 365. But then in terms of margin.
Well, also, Kyle, if you put your Office 365 on your managed services agreement, a lot of times if you have your costs correct in there, you're getting about 16% margin on those Office 365. So
and then you go, Kyle,
what's that going to do? It's going to make your managed services profitability look way lower.
And you talk to your peers and go, why can't I hit, 55 to 60%?
My peers are at 60% and I'm down here at 35. Why is that?
Yeah, best practices become hard to achieve because 16 plus 55 divided by 2 instead of 55%. Now, granted, if you're a mature business and you start to bundle in things, that's fine. You just need to change your targets when you are running these types of businesses. Now, I do see one question, then how would you suggest we bill Microsoft 365? And while obviously there's a lot of great tools, Sync 365, Pax8, all those types of reconciliation tools, have it in a different agreement, right? You can have multiple agreements for your customers. So you'll have your managed services agreement, and then your 365 agreement, which different types as well. You really want that for very high level type reviews. And then your additions go into there. And then the one pushback we usually hear from that is, well, I don't want the customer to get two invoices. That's fine. You can actually have a function inside of ConnectWise where you can actually bundle those invoices. So the client actually only gets one invoice. And that usually is what's going to be what a lot of mature MSPs do. That way you can really start to see those costs accurately, the revenue correct, and then your service managers can now manage those services that require a little bit more finesse without having, right, the whole idea of this topic, second guess, is my profitability correct? And we spend a lot of time really figuring out root, what are the 4 or 5 agreement types that we sell as an organization? And if a client goes all in and buys everything we sell, I should see 4 or 5 agreement types. And then your finance team or your back office team is able to know which ones they look at and reconcile, or which ones have tools that auto-reconcile, right? Now we're not just hunting and pecking. There's the logic to the agreement types we pull up. And then as a service director or business owner, I can look at all of my managed service profitability and all of my 365 profitability and all of my backup profitability, right? It's just a better way to manage those. Thank you, Chad, for the question. And then one big thing in here too is, do they include labor costs? One thing that we have seen in the past is skews in the additions. And yes, Chad, you could do that with proper GL codes. You totally can. But this is really reflecting on how I look at the data inside of ConnectWise and C360, because I have those microeconomic functions I need to look at, like client by client breakdown, where in QuickBooks, I can only see the total. So if I really want that microeconomics to see which client is bringing down the curve, I really need to look at that in ConnectWise, not in QuickBooks. Yep. But as an owner, it's always going to be QuickBooks. But anywho, really quick on the labor costs, we sometimes see additions where it's like $500 for employee costs. Like it's this made up SKU. Get rid of them. And we're going to get to real quick member costs in another section. But you shouldn't have any just pure labor costs inside of your additions. That should be function of the timesheets.
Yeah. Agreement structure. So how are you treating agreement additions? We've kind of already talked about this one. Is it like a landfill?
I apologize. I think I get too passionate about that topic.
Yeah, that's okay. Hey, you worked on it. I do have some examples in here. Kyle pretty much talked on both of those two things at one time. When I'm looking, this is just pulling up some information from our agreement profitability reporting. If you come in here, you can see here with this particular client, you're billing a total of close to $7K a month, but their additions cost is super high for agreement of that size. So if this is a true managed services agreement, you would think you could put more than 10 hours on that agreement to get a profitability of 38%. More than likely, this agreement probably has those product costs in there that Kyle was discussing. Same with these two here. And then we also have talked about that consistency piece. So you've got all of these agreements named the same. They're the same agreement type. More than likely, this one is just a service agreement. There's no additions, or it's that inconsistency piece that we were talking about where you don't have your additions put in on this particular agreement. So it was set up wrong. So you're overstating. Yeah, right? You're overstating your profitability. You don't have your tool cost in there. Do they have anti-spam? Do they have antivirus?
Right, SkinCarRx at the very bottom. If I was being a consultant for you right now, Christy, I'd go, well, it shows 20% margin, but not a single ounce of labor costs are
no labor. No, this is I pointed this one out. It's truly a product agreement, right? It's probably an Office 365 agreement, and it's showing up in your managed services. So if I wanted to look at my overall managed service margin, I'm coming in here at 70%, but I've got everything thrown into that trash can. So I can't tell what I'm making truly on my managed services because it's all thrown in there together. So I just wanted to kind of point out, if these were set up consistently, with just managed services on one agreement, products on another agreement, you would quickly be able to come in here and see what your labor cost is on the agreement, less any additions, to see what your profit margin is. So if this was truly just tool costs, because you are going to have still some additions costs on those managed services agreements, and that's another place where I see some inconsistencies. You know, what does it take to run that managed services agreement? There is a cost there. You know, if it's, you know, your monitoring tools, your agents, your anti-spam, antivirus, somebody puts, you know, they put no before in there. If it's part of that fee that you're charging for managed services, it needs to be in that additions cost. If it's truly just product, like your Microsoft, put those onto that separate agreement like I was talking about. Still can bundle them, bill them together, but you're going to be able to get a lot better reporting quickly if you separate those out.
And we had a question, Christy, and I think it's an important one because I can see some many reasons on doing this. Travis asked about how do you track agreement size and amount over time? And I think this one's a little bit more of a mature question because you really want to look at how a client has probably evolved over time with you,
Yep.
especially when you look at client profitability rather than yearly profitability or agreement profitability. You want to look at the whole, there as a whole picture. And I've seen a few different ways of this being done, especially at my own MSPs. The most common that I typically see, especially in longer lasting MSPs that have been around more a while, is usually the price changes because you've changed the agreement, right? Your managed services now include this endpoint. It went from cost per server to cost per user. It went from, you know, my gold plan to my platinum plan. I changed the precious metal it was. Typically what I would usually see there is just a new agreement, right? You expired the old one, you create a new agreement with the new terms, the new quote, the new pricing, the new additions, right? You keep some consistency in there, and you would see one agreement expired, and they basically signed up for the new one. Now, the other way you could do it is by additions as well. Say you're just doing a apples to apples, you're just renewing them with like a 6% price increase because cost of living has gone up 6% this year. Oh my God, that's another topic we could talk about. So how do you manage that mess? Is expire the edition, put the new rate of the new edition, and have it start to be the go forward. So you would see the 2022 rate, the 2023 rate. And I always like to actually put the year in there. So I could say, oh, it's my 2022 plan or my 2023 plan. That way the client, just like the iPhone 6, the iPhone 7, the iPhone 8, right? They knew if they upgraded to the 2022 Platinum plan, they got something better than the 2021 Platinum plan, just a little bit more money. So that's usually what we'll see there. When it comes to reporting, that gets a little bit messy, but typically you would just look at top line revenue growth over the last X number of months, years, whatever.
Kyle, I did pull up this while you were talking about that, kind of to see agreement over time. This margin review report, because I do get asked that question, you know, who do I need to focus on? What does my client look like over time? This is just showing it by margin. We actually have this report in effective rates, a lot of other ways, but it's a way to kind of color code and see your agreement profitability over time. And that way you can see where to focus, because it is managed services. You're going to have a month where it might be a lower margin in one particular month. As long as you know what that is, maybe it was the time of year that you do server updates for that particular client and you know it's going to be lower. But in here, you can see that you're looking for these pinks, but then you're looking for clients that are staying in the pink. And that's how you know when to go in and focus on those clients. If it's a client, here's one that was doing well, and now it's constantly going into the pink. Being able to drill into this data, all the Cognition reports have the drill through, so you can go and look at that ticket and labor and then see, okay, what did cause that increase in that particular agreement? So lots, again, a lot of it has to do with consistency.
Can't see your screen. Can you switch your share?
Oh, am I not sharing? I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. You're on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt you.
What? Okay, let me see here. I thought I was sharing it. That might help, right? Here we go. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I got super excited when you started talking about it. I was like, oh, I'm going to show this margin review report. Again, this is one of my favorite reports in Cognition360, to be able to see over time, where do I need to focus? Here's the color code up here. You can see you want all your agreements in this blue-gray. You're looking for these pinks, so you can quickly see, like, here's a client that's staying in the pink. We definitely need to look at them. Here's a client that I was talking about earlier, just a few minutes ago, You're doing pretty well with that agreement, and then bam, they dropped. Why did they drop? Being able to quickly drill into this information and see why, super important. Was it, did you bring on more users and somehow you missed it? That they acquired another company and they've got 10 new users and that they didn't get added to the agreement. It's a way to quickly see that information. So I just wanted to kind of point out this, since the question was asked, how do I see, over
Well, and
time,
real quick,
who to
this
focus
actually
on?
expands, Christy, onto an earlier point we had, which is the agreement types. I see that it's filtered right now, but
Hmm.
right, like we were talking
Oh, yeah.
earlier, right? If you have 365 and managed services, then you are confident you're only looking at your managed services margin,
Yep. Look
right?
at that. So
Right.
see,
So
all at
that's
about the
exactly
15%
why
mark.
you want to do that.
Yeah. It's pretty fast. Here's all the clients. Here's their margin just for Office
And
365.
that's what it should always look like. And
Yeah.
another thing, and what's if you can go back real quick for me to manage services, and this is why I love your guys' tool so much, is whenever I was working with MSPs, one of the things that I would always implement for their service managers or their account managers was I called it the top five, bottom five meeting. And every month, whether it was prior or at the start, we would have a meeting and look at the top 10 clients where they were either over profitable or under profitable. Meaning, right, like, hey, you're ignoring them or you're putting way too much work to revenue ratio into them. And what it would allow us to do is go, okay, if we're only going to focus on 10, 6, 4 clients a month, then let's focus on the two that are really unprofitable, right? Because we're thinking about averages. It allows you to be a little bit more accurate about what you're going to hit. And then let's talk about the top two where they're way over profitable, where they're probably feeling ignored. They're not feeling the love. Maybe they got downsized, right? Go bring them. I would tell my account managers at my MSP, go take them out to a steak dinner, right? Because I
Yeah.
can go afford to drop $300-400 on them because I don't want them to walk out the door. And a lot of times as MSPs, I always envision like those old pirate movies, right? You would see the whirlpool and it would suck in the pirate ship. To me, that's an MSP where you have two of your profitable clients walking out the door and two clients are walking in because you ignored the two profitable clients. And it's so hard
Yeah.
to grow outside of that that you do need to focus on those ones that are over profitable. Which gets us to our last topic, which,
Yeah, Kyle, we've got about 5 minutes left too, so we got to rush
okay,
through
I'll
this.
speed
But
through
hey,
this.
guys, thank you for your questions. I love them. Keep them
Yes,
coming,
we do love
and
them.
we can stay on after. I just want to be conscious of you guys' time. We're happy to stay on and answer questions for as long as you want.
Oh, and Chris, you probably get the pull up actually while I'm going through this.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that.
So we're going to ask you as a poll just with some basic questions. If you have any extra questions and want to stay after and have a one-on-one, please hit us up. Also, our contact information, we'll put it on the screen real quick. Actually, Christy, if you just want to do that, and I'll kind of talk through this subject. Basically, guys, all of this is nothing if you do not have the members in your ConnectWise with accurate costs. Meaning, if I, Johnny, put 2 hours into a ticket, right, I may only make fully burdened, let's say $35 an hour. So it should do $70 of cost to that ticket. Now, on the other front, right, if me as CEO, where I'm like $100 an hour, right, based off of burden and whatever, right, like that should be billing $200 to that ticket if I spent 2 hours. It's so important to make sure that everyone has an accurate member cost in order to really understand your margins when you're looking at that microeconomics of client by client breakdown, right? And that way your service managers can start to comprehend, do I put my tier 3 on this ticket or do I put my tier 1 onto this ticket? It starts to naturally incentivize them to use that cheaper resource rather than that more expensive resource, right? Because they know that it's going to really hit that client margin. By the way, if you read between the lines, this means that your service manager should be responsible for client profitability. Going back to Pete, we should have a scorecard for our service managers that say you are expected to deliver managed services at this percentage, right? No ifs, ands, or buts. That is what they do. That is what they're responsible for, not how good does my server work. And it's something that really will drive your business forward because now you as an owner are not the only ones that are passionate about really, right, driving the bottom line, managing your costs. Now, one thing that we did here for years was, well, I don't want people that are admins in managed to see how much so-and-so is making. And ConnectWise released an update about probably 6 months ago, 9 months ago, where you can
Finally.
actually, finally, where you can create a service security rule. And that security rule will actually lock out the ability to see that member cost. So you as an owner, right, can be or a CFO or whoever's controlling the payroll can have access to that one little feature, and then you can make an admin security role that has access to every single thing else except for that one feature. So if you have like a service manager or a sysadmin that's manage, then you can actually enable that. So it's a really easy way to have confidence that you can now use your tool to the fullest extent without some weird HR or payroll type concern. So just do it, makes your life easier.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have an issue with question 2 on the poll, but I'm
Yeah,
also
I'm not sure what happened on that. I was told to make sure I launched it, so I did. If Kyle and I, we would love to talk to you guys more in regards to Cognition360, what we have to offer there, and also Sierra Pacific Group. Great partnership that we have. Sierra on the consulting side, be able to fix these issues that you're having. If you feel like we've talked about something that kind of hit a pain point with you, would love to be able to show you what it looks like in our reporting, and then you could set up some sessions with Sierra Pacific as well to see if there's a project that they could help you with. That's the cool thing about Sierra, is they will actually do the work for you. So if you're in that I don't have time to fix it category, it is one of those ways to kind of get it done. Also wanted to let you know about some different specials for attending today. Sierra Pacific is offering a free ConnectWise assessment for your ConnectWise data worth about $1,500 value. And we at Cognition360 are offering free onboarding up to $300. So it's a way to really get a risk-free trial of both Sierra Pacific and Cognition360. If you're interested in either one of those, we will get in touch with you. Here is our contact information. You're welcome to reach out to me at christy.perez@cognition360.com or Kyle at Sierra Pacific Group. .com. We would love to talk to you more. I would love to show you a demo of Cognition360. Thank you so much for attending today. Again, we'll stay on for a couple of more minutes in case there are any questions coming in that we would like to, we'd love to answer them for you.
boom. Yeah, definitely, especially if you guys are really concerned about cleaning up the old data.
Yeah.
That's always the concern we get is, hey, great, you guys helped us build a process and train our engineers and teach us how to do time entry and clean up all of our agreements. But well, what about either manage it going forward or cleaning up all the stuff from before? We work with a lot of really large MSPs that are high in the M&A game.
Kyle, I did have a question come in the Q&A. This will be a good one for you. I'm anxious to actually hear what you say because I see this a lot. Do you recommend setting up the agreement cost on the agreement main page or as an addition?
Depends on how your agreements are set up. If you are strictly a per unit type of agreement, so say you're only charging per user or only charging per server and endpoint, then you would probably want those costs to be tracked inside of the additions. Now, what I do see at times is sometimes like a site fee or an agreement fee or a flat fee. I know at my MSP, every client had like a $1,500 flat fee based off of kind of some really special use cases. I had a lot of legal and accounting clients, so I kind of had to have them in there. So I would track those costs for that flat fee inside of there. And then all the additions would be the increases. Or I also have seen agreements where, hey, we're going to cover the first 20 users and everything beyond that gets billed. Well, then what I would probably do now, I would use the addition with the less of feature. But, I've also seen it where that's part of the flat fee with the flat cost. So again, it's one of those, it depends. And if I personally am in charge of it, I would always go the per unit side because it's a lot easier to manage and to see and to reconcile.
Well, it's also easy to, you don't have to worry about it expiring. If it's on that front page, the audit trail is harder. If you just change it on the front page, it's hard to see what those changes are. I always set up everything I build off an agreement, not in the early days, but in my last MSP, set it up as an addition. And that way, each year, if you go for a renewal or it's 3-year renewal, however you're doing those renewals, you just cancel out that addition and add in the new one. So you've got your history, within those additions that way, as well.
Totally.
So yeah, good question though. Let's see. I don't see anything else coming in. So, hey guys, thanks for staying on. It looks like most of you stayed on till the end. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully you'll go and enjoy Cinco de Mayo today. I think I'm going to go find a place that has good margaritas tonight. Again, thanks so much. Look forward to hearing from you and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, guys.
See you later.